Hello everyone, I'm Tara from Study Hire. Firstly, I just wanted to say a big thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We're really excited to have you with us today. So for introductions, I just wanted to mention that I'm also joined with Shamsa, who's also from Study Hire, and we're really fortunate to have with us some members of Student Action for Refugees. So we've got Siobhan, Abdullahrahman, and hopefully we'll be joined soon by Tamana as well. For those of you who are not familiar with Study Hire, we work with 4 partner universities. So these are Oxford Brookes, the University of Oxford, Buckinghamshire New University, and the University of Reading. We work at Study Hire with students to help them make informed choices about their future with regards to their education. So you may be familiar with Zoom, but for those of you who aren't, this is a Zoom webinar, which means that we can't see or hear you. However, you can keep in touch with us throughout the webinar by using the chat function that should appear on your screen. So you can put any comments or questions you have in the chat box. We'll have a chance at the end of the webinar to go through your questions and have a question and answer session. Also, just to mention, there's also the raise hand function that will be on your screen, but we're not going to be using that. And then we'll also launch a poll at the end of the webinar. This will pop up on your screen and you'll be able to rank between 1 and 5. And that's just to give us an idea of how useful this webinar was for you. So I'd really appreciate if you could respond to that poll as it appears. So after the webinar, if you need any support or have any questions relating to your education choices, you can contact myself or Shamsa via our secure chat platform. This can be found on the students section of the Study Hire website, and that address should be on your screen now. One final thing is just to let you know that the goodie bag of resources for attending the webinar today will be sent to you soon, and after the webinar we'll send across to you the presentation that STAR are going to use today, and also their guidance for applying for scholarships. So I'll pass over to Siobhan now.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that okay? Yeah, great. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to be talking about access to university in the UK for individuals from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds. My name's Siobhan, as Tara explained. I'm Access to University Coordinator at STAR, so I'm part of the national team, but I'll be telling you a bit more about STAR as an organisation. And as Tara also mentioned, we're joined today by Tamana and Abdullahrahman, 2 of STAR's equal access activists, who will be telling you a bit more about their experience and their key tips for accessing university. So I'll start off with an introduction to STAR and the Equal Access campaign. And then I'm going to run through some of the most common questions that we often get asked at STAR. So I'll be talking about your eligibility for different types of support. I'll be talking about sanctuary scholarships, what they are and what is available. And then going through briefly, how do you apply for university and for scholarships? And how do postgraduate applications work, before then signposting you to further support. STAR isn't, unfortunately, able to offer casework. We can't offer dedicated support for university applications, but there are other organisations out there that you can turn to for different types of support. And then, as I said, we'll round off with some top tips from the equal access activists. So what is STAR and what do we do? Well, STAR is a movement of students building a society where refugees are welcomed and supported to thrive as equal members of the community. So we're a network of groups at universities across the country, and we've been going since 1994, so over 25 years now. And I'm just checking my maths is over. Yeah. And we are engaged in this movement to make the UK more welcoming. We do that through volunteering at local projects. We do it through campaigning for things like equal access. We do it through fundraising, and we're also involved in educating to raise awareness on campus. And as I said, equal access is one of the main things that STAR campaigns for. So we have set up the Equal Access campaign 13 years ago, and we lead it now in partnership with the NUS, the National Union of Students. And what we mean by equal access, we're campaigning for access to university for refugees and people seeking asylum on an equal footing to everybody else in the UK. So we want to remove the barriers that exist that are financial, academic, and otherwise that make it more difficult for people from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds to get to university. And we do this in lots of different ways. We work with lived experience activists, like the equal access activists joining us today. We work with students in STAR groups across the country, and we work with university staff to campaign for opportunities to access higher education. We also work directly with universities, so part of my role is helping universities to develop scholarships and access programs. And we try to raise awareness of these opportunities among potential applicants through events like this one today. And at a national level, we work with partners to try and deliver policy change and to make the wider environment more favourable. What you will notice in that list, I'm going to be talking about scholarships, but STAR doesn't administer scholarships ourselves. We're here to kind of share information and we support the scholarships. But in terms of getting more detail about specific scholarships, you'll hear me say a few times today that it's always best to get in touch with the universities that offer these scholarships. And you can read more on the STAR website. Just a heads up, I'm going to be talking about things on the STAR website today. Our website is actually changing at the end of next week. So while the links, the main website will stay the same, some of the more specific links might change, but all of the information will be there. So hopefully you'll be able to find it on the new website. Okay, then moving on to what am I eligible for? I'm just going to give you a brief run through of some of the things that you should be thinking about when you're considering applying to university. This might look a bit intimidating as a snapshot, but this is just to give you an overview, and I'll recommend that you kind of go away and research a bit more about your particular circumstances. So the three main things that you should be thinking about, firstly, you can see here permission to work. While this isn't directly relevant to your permission to study, you do have the permission to study unless the Home Office have specifically denied you it, then it's still important to think about your permission to work, because if you're considering supporting yourself alongside your studies, if you are considering doing a course that involves some kind of work, or if you're thinking about your options after university, this is a place to start. And as you can see here, the general picture across the different countries of the UK is that while you are seeking asylum, you don't have permission to work, although of course there are exceptions there. The other thing you'll want to think about is your student fee classification. So whether you are charged international or home fees. And the exact amount depends on where you are in the UK. So that varies from the cheapest being home fees in Scotland being £0, up to home fees in England being £9,250. And then international fees tend to be a lot higher. That depends on your particular course. It is worth, though, looking at the universities that you're applying to, because even where it says international here, so as you can see, generally people seeking asylum are classed as international students. But if you look at the particular university you're applying to, they may well have a policy of charging home fees to asylum seeking students, because that's something that STAR has campaigned for. So a number of universities do exercise flexibility on this. And then finally, you'll want to think about your access to student finance. So by that, we mean student loans to cover your fees and your living costs at university. And again, generally you can see the situation is that if you are currently seeking asylum, you don't have access to student finance. If you have another status as the result of an asylum claim, then that your exact eligibility varies depending on where you are in the UK. And there are also some additional residency requirements attached. So you've got the link here to the UKISA website, that's the UK Council for International Student Affairs. And you can go away and have a look at that one in a bit more detail to make sure that you are eligible or that you have a clear picture of what you need to be eligible. If you are eligible for student finance, by the way, as you may already know, that's something that the vast majority of students in the UK do access and use that to fund their studies. It's certainly not unusual, and it doesn't work the same way as lots of other loans do in the UK. It's treated more like a tax, so you only start paying it back once you're earning money, and it's taken directly out of your payslip before you've even received the money. So that's hopefully a bit less intimidating than the idea of taking on a large loan. If you aren't eligible for student finance, or even if you are, but you're in need of additional support, there are scholarships that are available. And these are often called sanctuary scholarships because they are targeting people who are seeking sanctuary in the UK. And they're packages of financial support provided by universities to help people who face barriers to higher education because of their immigration status. And they do sometimes have different names. Sometimes you'll see a university calls it an Article 26 scholarship. And that's after the article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that says everybody has equal access to higher education on the basis of merit. Or in the same vein, they might be called equal access scholarships. Don't worry too much about the name. The principle is the same. And one thing we try to do at STAR is to collate all of the information about scholarships across the country. So you can see a full list on the STAR website of the over 70 universities that offer these types of financial support packages. So as I say, over 70 universities offer scholarships. One thing to know right away though is that they are quite varied. So as I've already mentioned, they're administered by universities and they're quite varied in terms of who is eligible to apply. That's usually related to your immigration status, but often universities have other requirements such as your previous study or other conditions that you have to meet. They are also varied in terms of what courses are covered. Often courses that take longer than traditional undergraduate courses, for example, things like medicine, may be excluded from the scholarship. So check the university that you're looking at and make sure that the course that you want to do is covered. They also offer different levels of financial support. That ranges from a fee waiver, which just means you don't pay any fees, to some scholarships that include a bursary or in-kind support. So that includes things like accommodation or book vouchers, things that you need to complete your studies. And they are also varied in terms of the application process. So they have their own opening and closing dates. They have their own application form. So it's not centralized like the UCAS process. You need to apply individually to individual universities. Because of how complicated this is, we do try and keep it all on the STAR website. And if you sign up to our mailing list through this link here, as Tara mentioned, you'll be getting these slides by email after the event. If you sign up to our mailing list, we send out a monthly newsletter where, among other things, we include information about scholarships and any upcoming deadlines. Also on the STAR website, we have a list of funds that provide small grants. So if you aren't able to find a scholarship that suits you, or if you need some funds before university to help with things like an IELTS exam or the UCAS fee, then you can apply to these smaller pots of money offered by other charitable organisations. So then you've done your research, you've found scholarships and support that suits you. How then do you apply? Well, this is just the simple version. You do want to start, it might seem like you're kind of jumping the gun a bit, but you do want to start by looking at the scholarships list and choosing a course and a university that has a scholarship that suits you. That's particularly important if you don't have access to student finance, to make sure that you have the option of funding that will cover all of your degree. Then once you've found that right course and that right university for you, you can apply through UCAS for undergraduate degrees, or if it's for postgraduate, you'll apply directly to the university. Generally then, you have to wait until you receive an offer, so you're accepted onto the course, and then you apply for the scholarship. So the general picture is you need to apply for the university, receive an offer, and then apply for the scholarship. And that can be quite nerve-wracking for some people because you have to wait and quite late in the process to apply for the scholarship. This is why it's good to use all of your options. So through UCAS, that's 5 course choices that you get. It's good to make sure that all of those universities offer scholarships that you're eligible for to try and keep your options open. That's the simple version. The slightly more complex version is that, as I say, it's different for each program because each university administers their own scholarship. But the general picture is that most scholarships require you to have a place at that university before applying. But as I say, do check. You can find all of the website links on the STAR website. Check with the individual university and see what their requirements are. In terms of the rest of the application process, there is support available to help with your UCAS application. The UCAS website, hopefully you've had a look at it already. They have excellent resources to help with things like personal statements. They also have certain pages specifically for refugees and asylum seekers. And they have advice guides, which I've got a link to later in the presentation, in different languages to help you with the application. So you can search UCAS support, take a look at the UCAS website, and you can also connect directly with students. There are support sites like the Student Room, which is a forum where you can talk to current students or applicants and ask them your questions. And there's also support that you can receive through the STAR Student Network and the Equal Access Network, which you'll be hearing about at the end of the presentation. One thing to bear in mind, though, is that because of how complex and how different the application processes are, do make sure that you apply to university early to give yourself more time with the scholarship application. You'll, as Tara mentioned, you'll receive a kind of guidance document with more detail about scholarship applications, but I'm just going to highlight some of our top tips for now. The first thing to say is that it's really important to research the university and ensure that you meet the eligibility criteria. I've already said that, but I can't say it enough. You really want to avoid the situation where you've got an offer from the university and then you realise that you don't meet the requirements for the scholarship. Then when you're applying to the scholarship, do make sure that you read the application guidance carefully. Universities are trying to help you to apply. They're not trying to trick you. So they will give you often quite detailed guidance about how to fill out the application form and how to answer the questions. Read that carefully and make sure you tailor your response to that particular university. If you've got any questions, get in touch with the university. And as I say again at the bottom, if possible, speak to the student advice service or a scholarship program coordinator. This is a great way to get your questions answered, but it's also a really good way to start building a relationship with the university and to help them get to know you a bit and why the scholarship will be so important to you. In most cases, the scholarship application will have a personal statement. This is different to the UCAS personal statement. On UCAS, you're focusing mainly on the academic side of things and why you want to study a certain course. For the scholarship, this is more about why the scholarship will be so important to you. So here you can share the barriers to education that you have faced and give a bit more detail about how the scholarship will help you to fulfill your goals and overcome those barriers. Like I say, there's much more detailed information in the guidance document about that. But it is helpful to make your financial circumstances clear. There are a lot of scholarships available, but there's also a lot of demand. So to make yourself stand out from the crowd and to really convince the university that you need this scholarship, it's helpful if you can give a financial picture of how much difference that support will make. Okay, just a brief note about postgraduate applications. A lot of what I've said I've referred to undergraduate, but it's mostly the same for postgraduate applications. The only differences are that the deadlines aren't always the same. Look at the individual university. It's not as rigid as the UCAS process, and you can often join at different parts of the year. You also apply directly to the university rather than through the UCAS centralized system. But scholarships are still available. There are fewer at a postgraduate level, but they are still there. Have a look at the STAR list and you can see which ones offer postgraduate level there. If you're eligible for student finance, you should be eligible for a postgraduate study as well. And you can also get in touch with universities about other sources of funding. Even if they don't have a sanctuary scholarship, they might have another bit of money, or a particular department might have some funding that you're eligible for. And it's important to make sure you understand the academic requirements. For postgraduate study, you should have studied to a degree level in a relevant subject already, but some courses will take relevant work experience in the sector, so you can talk to universities to find out more about that. As I mentioned at the start, STAR itself isn't able to offer casework, but there are lots of places that you can find further support from. So have a look at the Refugee Education UK website. They have fact sheets and information about higher education and further education, and they've got an advice line that you can get in touch with by WhatsApp or by email. I mentioned UKISA. Their website has lots of helpful information about fees and entitlements, including access to student finance. You can get in touch with the Quorum Children's Legal Centre, the Migrant Children's Project. They have some fact sheets online, and they also have an advice service which covers young people as well. And I said about the UCAS advice, do have a look around the UCAS website. They've got lots of useful information there. And if you're looking at your qualifications, you'll hear a bit more about this from Abdullahrahman, but there is a service run by ENIC, formerly called NARIC, where you can get a statement of comparability for your qualifications. We've got a list of other resources and organisations that could help you as well on the STAR website. And I mentioned already the STAR network and the Equal Access network. So if Tamana is ready, I will hand over to her now to talk a little bit more about the Equal Access Network and what the idea is behind this. Tamana, are you there? No, perhaps a connection issue. I'm going to carry on for a bit. This is just to wrap up. So the Equal Access Network, this is something that STAR Equal Access activists set up a couple of months ago. And where it came from was the kind of need that they told us about to have a space where students and applicants from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds can come together and get some peer support. So this is an open, interactive and friendly forum where students from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds can connect and learn from each other's experiences of higher education. And the whole idea is to build a sense of community, value and empowerment. So while it's not a kind of expert advice service, it is really valuable as a way of helping people to share their own experiences. If you want to get involved, you can like the Equal Access Network on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and there's also a closed members group on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, you can ask to join that. That is only open to current or aspiring students from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds. So it's a sort of safe space for people to talk and ask questions of each other. If you're not on social media, we'll also be organising online events every so often. If you sign up to the STAR Equal Access mailing list that I mentioned already, you can also find out about any upcoming events through that. Okay, and now I'll hand over to a member of the Equal Access Network and Equal Access activist, Abdullahrahman, to share a bit more about his experience and his top tips.
Right, thank you very much, Siobhan. Thanks, Shamsa. Thanks, Tara, for having me today. So, hello, everyone. My name is Abdullahrahman Sanhat, and I'm currently studying aeronautical engineering at the University of Salford. And I'm here to talk about my experience as an equal access activist and as a refugee who went to university. So, I think I'm going to start by summarizing what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, the required qualifications to get to university. Second of all, the English language requirements. And finally, I will touch upon the academic references required by the university. So when I first came here to the UK, I wanted to get into university, but honestly, I didn't know how. So I was a bit lost. And obviously, I finished my high school from my country. So when I started approaching universities, most of them told me that they do not recognize my high school certificate. And that was an issue that I was facing at that time. So I went to the Manchester College, and they told me that in order for us to recognize your certificate, you'll need to bring like an equivalent of it from the UK. So they advised me to contact NARIC, which is now called INEC, as Siobhan said. So I contacted them, and I have sent them my certificate and everything. So they came back to me with like a PDF file with an equivalence. It's called like a statement of comparability. And that statement of comparability was like recognized by most UK universities and UK further education providers. So obviously my certificate was like a level 2, which is equivalent to a GCSE. And it wasn't enough to go to university because, as you might be aware, in order to go to university, you'll need a level 3 course because year 1 in university is a level 4 course. So I had to do an access course before I go to university. So the issue was resolved by contacting NARIC and getting the equivalent of my high school certificate here in the UK. So the required qualifications are as follows. First of all, you need to have a level 2 course. In my case, it was my high school certificate, but it might be a GCSE here in the UK, or it might be a high school certificate from anywhere in the world. Number 2, you'll need a level 3 course. Now, the level 3 course, it might be A levels, might be BTEC, might be access course, okay, or you might do a foundation year 2. You'll also need an English language requirement. So most universities, as far as I know, they recognize the IELTS test. Now, obviously, if you have a GCSE from the UK with a grade 4 or above, then you don't need the IELTS test, obviously depending on the requirements of the university and the course that you would like to apply for. But for me personally, I have done the IELTS test. The IELTS test is like comprised of 4 sections: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Now it's a bit expensive. It costs nowadays £185, but there are some organizations that can help you with paying the IELTS fees. For example, RefuAid, and I think Siobhan has already included these organizations in the presentations that will be sent to you later by email. So also in addition to the IELTS, you can also do the TOEFL test, which is obviously recognized by most universities here in the UK. amongst a long list of English of recognized English tests. Now, in order to know what English tests that this university recognizes, you can go to the English language requirements on their website, and they will have a full list of the English tests that they approve, and also the required grade. Finally, I will speak about the academic references. Now, if you get an offer from any university here in the UK, if it was a conditional offer, like the one that I've got from the University of Salford, they will ask for an academic reference. Now, an academic reference, this means that, for example, if you went to college, they need a reference from your tutor in college or from your teacher in school, or for example, if you have if you studied English in a college, they can also write you a reference. It is very important that you provide this reference to the university, because as far as I know, most universities, they require this as a condition for your admittance to that course. So the academic reference is very important, and if it was required from you, the best thing to do is to contact your tutor or your teacher and tell them that the university requires an academic reference from me, and I would like you to write me one, please. So most importantly, qualifications, level 2 and level 3. And I would like to affirm on something, that if you have high school from abroad or from overseas, just like me, don't panic. It is all right. Contact NARIC, let them give you the equivalent of that qualifications that you have, and hopefully you'll have the chance to go to university. And I would like to add something to some universities that might also recognize your certificates. For example, the University of Salford, they now became familiar with the high school certificates from Kuwait, which is the country I come from. So now most students, they don't need the NARIC to go to Salford University particularly. So they can apply, and then they can send their qualifications, the Kuwaiti high school certificate, and the university recognizes it. And they also know what kind of grades they want from you if you're coming from Kuwait or any country that is recognized. So it's best to contact the admissions team before you make an application. Tell them about the qualifications you have, about the English language requirements, about the English tests that you might have done, any experience that might contribute to your admittance to the course, for example, medicine and dentistry, and hopefully they will be able to help you. So most importantly, the required qualifications, level 3 and level 2, English language requirements, very important. And finally, the academic reference. It is very important for you to arrange for an academic reference with one of your teachers or tutors before you apply to university, so that you become in the safe side. And that's all from me today. Thank you very much for Study Higher for this lovely webinar, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Abdullahrahman. Yeah, we're going to be joined by Tamana in a few minutes, but just while we wait, we'll start with some questions, and I'll just share this as well. If you have any questions after today, we have an inquiries form. So if you send, the easiest way, if you send an email to this email address, eainquiries@star-network.org.uk, can be a blank email. You'll get a bounce back with a link to our inquiries form, and you can put in any questions that you have there. Within the inquiries form as well, there are also lots of links like those that we've spoken about already, so that might answer your question. Also have a look at the STAR website. As I mentioned, it's changing, but all of the information will still be there. Hopefully it will look a little bit nicer next week. And you can follow STAR on Twitter for any updates about new scholarships or deadlines coming up. You can like us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Instagram to stay up to date about the wider student network. But yeah, if that's okay, we'll head to some questions now. Shamsa.
Thank you so much, Siobhan and Abdullahrahman. It was really, really useful having you chat through that and just being so practical about next steps. oftentimes it can be difficult to say, what do I actually need to do next? So it's difficult seeing all these options and saying, where do I go from here? Especially everyone's at different levels. We had some questions actually. Don't forget you can put more questions in the chat as we go along, but we did have some questions in advance. I have a feeling that most of them were answered, but I will just double check in case I misheard anything. But Abdullahrahman, you mentioned about IELTS test and the level 2, level 3. Is the level 2, level 3, is that functional skills or is that something different? Is that if you want to apply to university, best to do the IELTS test basically?
Yes, so it's not functional test. It's not functional skills. So if you do not have a GCSE from the UK, which is an English GCSE, the replacement is an IELTS test. So an IELTS test is an equivalent of the GCSE. So most universities, they accept it as an English language requirement. Perfect.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's reading, writing, speaking and listening. And as Abdullahrahman mentioned, some organizations will help you pay for that as well. So definitely check out all the links that are going to be in the slides when we send them through to you. I think this is a question for, I always thought of it as NARIC, but now it's changed to ENIC. So is that the best way to, so say if you have certificates from your home country, just go into their website and you have to contact someone, or is there like a main email, you just send it through to them, like certificates and stuff?
No, it's like an application form.
Oh, okay,
So
right.
Yeah, you create an account on the website, and then you go along the application, and they will ask for PDF copies of your transcripts, of your qualifications, and then they will, after I think 15 days, they will send you back the equivalent.
Amazing, right, perfect.
And just something to mention, sorry, Shamsin, about the IELTS. Now, there is a downside of the IELTS, is that they require a BRP or a passport. So if in case you didn't have like a refugee status or a travel document, you wouldn't be able to take the IELTS test. So that's a downside of the IELTS test.
That's a downside of the IELTS test. Okay, that's difficult. Definitely useful to hear, considering webinars open to refugees and asylum seekers.
Can I just add to that as well? Sure, as Abdullahrahman already mentioned, different universities can be flexible as well. So one downside of the ENIC process is that there is a fee attached to it. And the same with IELTS, there's a fee attached to it. If those aren't options for you, then it's always best to get in touch with the university and ask if they are able to be flexible. You can ask if they have contextual admissions. So if they are able to kind of make allowances because of your situation. And often, like Abdullahrahman said about Salford, increasingly universities have experience of working with students from different backgrounds, so they may be able to accept the certificate that you have, or increasingly they're willing to be flexible about English language qualifications, so they may accept something that doesn't have a fee attached to it, or they may accept some study that you've already done.
That's amazing. Thank you, Siobhan. That's good to know in case somebody was worried that they wouldn't be able to go through with it. I just thought as well, there's another question in terms of, you mentioned that STAR don't actually provide the scholarships, but you've provided links in your presentation about where to look for scholarships. Is the best way to look for scholarships, you would say, to first, when you're searching for the uni, or when you're actually looking at what uni that you're thinking of applying to search for the scholarship first before applying, do you think? Is that the kind of order that you think would be best?
Yeah, I would recommend starting with the scholarships list. I'll put the link in the chat now.
Oh, thank you. That's amazing.
So you can just start with that and see, what universities offer support that suits you. And then once you have an idea of a university that would suit you, then you can delve more into that university and the courses that they offer, but at least then you know that they have a financial support package that will help you. So yeah, the scholarships list is a good place to start. And if you scroll to the bottom of that list as well, you can also see some scholarships that aren't attached to particular universities. So 2 that are open at the moment and closing in a few weeks. There's the Westheimer Scholarship for healthcare related courses, and the Marks Scholarship for postgraduate courses. So there are some other options like that that are a bit more flexible in terms of which university you go to.
Amazing. Yep, that's really useful, because then you, as you mentioned in the chat, you don't want to apply to something and then later realize that they maybe can't give you the support that you need for your particular case. So I think this was definitely mentioned in the presentation anyway, but in terms of you're searching for the scholarship beforehand, but for applying for the scholarship, you need to have a place secured at that university to be able to then apply to the scholarship. Is that the right way to think about it? So even though you've searched for the scholarship before, you need to still apply to that uni as normal and then secure a place and then do the scholarship application.
Yeah, exactly. For most cases, what you'll find at the moment, most scholarships are already closed for the next academic year. So if you are currently researching and preparing to apply for the 2022-2023 academic year, you can have a look at the scholarships list and get a general picture of the universities that offer scholarships, but you'll see a lot of them are closed at the moment or are closing soon. They tend to reopen in the same academic year, the same year that you'd be starting. So if you're starting in September 2022, the scholarships will be opening earlier in 2022, usually between January and April. Most of them will start opening. So now is just the research stage and finding an option that suits you. And then after you've applied, after you've got your place, that's generally when you'll do the actual application.
Amazing. And is that sort of in conjunction with student finance too? So just generally, we are aware that when you apply for a uni, you don't necessarily have to have a place at that uni to then apply to student finance. That's separate, isn't it? That's separate to the scholarship.
Yeah, that's separate. The only thing I'd say about student finance, it's good to apply for that as early as possible if you are eligible, because there can be, you know, hiccups and there can be delays in proving your eligibility. So yeah, even if you're also applying to scholarships, do your student finance application and do it nice and early, so that you've got that secured as well.
Just sort of timings wise, I think if I'm aware, Tara can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you know January is we tend to like January 15th is usually the deadline for applying to uni, and then after that around about I would say March time the student finance stuff starts coming out. So as Siobhan was saying, Abdullahrahman, I don't know if you had the same experience, but I personally really struggled with student finance. It's really hard to try and get all those documents together and just everything. So if you have you know, added experiences that might be harder to prove, it's definitely cool to start it earlier, but that's separate to the scholarship. It's just everyone's aware about that. Then another question. Okay, so possibly Abdullahrahman, you'll know more about this. Is it possible, you know how you said about the ENIC and you transferred your grades and stuff, is it possible to, if somebody had done a specialized course beforehand in their home country, like possibly a master's in a specialized field, can that also be sent to them? Or is that different?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Any kind of course that you do in your home country can be sent to them. And then they will get back to you if they are willing to give you like a statement of compatibility of that course or not. If yes, then that's good. If no, then they don't recognize it, unfortunately.
Okay, right, interesting.
So
And
it's worth sending it.
Yes, definitely. I would say it's worth sending. Definitely, I agree. And there was just a particular case, possibly might need a bit more research on it. Someone was starting to study for a master's course but was unable to finish it. Can they apply to a master's course here? And do they have to mention that they started it in their own home country, or can they just start it and not mention it if it wasn't finished or anything? Do you think they should still mention it?
Definitely, if they hold a bachelor's degree, then they can apply for the master's degree here in the UK. Now, the question is, if the course is the same, for example, they have done like a semester of Master of Business Management in their home country, and they're applying for business management here in the UK, it's worth sending their transcript from their home country to the university
Mhm.
Okay, and then the call is for the university to decide if they need to start all over again or just pass them the first semester. It's all up to the university, but it's worth sending it to them, obviously. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I don't know if you had any comments on that, Siobhan. If not, I can, if there are no other questions in the chat. No, I can't see any.
I'll just add to
Yeah.
that in terms of student finance. If you have done previous study at an equivalent level, even if it was outside of the UK, that can be a reason to disqualify you from accessing student finance. So just check, again, another reason to apply as early as possible. Check if you're eligible for student finance, or if you have previous study at the same level or an equivalent level, then you might not be eligible for a student loan.
Thank you, Siobhan. That's really useful on that. And thank you for your answers to the questions. Oh, we've got another question in the chat, actually. So this could be Siobhan, Abdullahrahman, Tamana. Question is, how long will it usually take to get a conditional, unconditional offer from uni through UCAS?
I think I can answer this one.
Yeah.
It's not set, to be honest. So it depends on the admissions department at that particular university. So, for example, I applied for Salford in February and I received the offer 10 days later. But some of my friends who applied for the same university for the same course, they received the offer like 2 months later. So it depends on the university.
Yeah, the general picture. So you'll apply through UCAS by January. I think next year they've changed the deadline to the 22nd of January. And then you'll usually start getting your offers after applications have closed, and the deadline, universities have to get back to you. I think it's by the end of May. So yeah, as Abdullahrahman said, it can happen really quickly and it can take a long time. But
And
by the end of May, everything
just
should.
to add a note, I applied in February. That was late. Don't do like it. Apply before January, before the 15th of January.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's on. So thank you so much for answering all our questions. We don't have any time for any more questions at the moment, but what you can do is you would have got an email from myself. So just literally just email me back with any questions that you have. I can't see any more on the chat at the moment. We just really wanted to quickly, please, launch a poll if you're okay to answer. And it's just how much knowledge do you have about your higher education options? If you remember, we did ask this in your registration form, and we would really like it if you could just, put on the scale whether your number has changed or whether you have any more knowledge about your higher education options. We'd really appreciate that. Just waiting for everyone to have a go at voting. And don't forget, you're going to get all this. If you couldn't manage to write notes or anything that quick, you're going to get the slides afterwards. So a few more people just to vote. And yeah, and as Tamana said, oh, thank you so much, Fuad. Fuad just saying that he's lost but now understands the how the system works. So thank you so much. I'll end the poll and just hand over to my colleague Tara again to do the ending. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who's spoken today and everyone that's attended and asked lots of questions. All the speakers have provided really practical help, and I'm sure our attendees have really benefited from it. They're definitely saying so in the chat. So massive thank you to Siobhan, Abdullahrahman and Tamana. Sorry you were having so many technical issues, but thank you for sharing your experience. And just to let those know who have attended that we'll be sharing the slides and we'll be sending out the resource packs to you. Also, thank you, and I hope you all have a lovely evening in the sunshine. Thank you for joining.